Hey everybody, it's Brian Burns. Welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Hey, I want to make sure you're all aware I've got show notes. And to find them on the iPhone, you just swipe up on the podcast, depending on what podcast player. If that doesn't work, I would go onto YouTube and just say, how do I find the show notes for this podcast player that you're using? It should be super simple. Why I bring this up is I got all my links in there to all the partners and all the deals that they are offering for you to get a 1 month free and check out their products. We got Nudge and Pipedrive, Discover Orgs in there, and a couple of other partners that are less specific to the podcast, but products that I have used, I like, and I've worked to get a particular deal for you to check it out and decide whether or not it's a great match for you. And the show notes is the way to do that. Much better than trying to get my attention on LinkedIn. I just get so many notes per day, and unfortunately, I can't respond to all of them. Anybody who sends me a question, I put it into the Sales Questions podcast, which is a separate show that's very focused. There's no real intro into it. I don't talk about any products on it, and I only answer your questions. And I put a description or an update to the course at the very end that you can either skip through or listen to depending on your level of interest. If you'd like to schedule a call with me to see if one of the courses fits where you're at, whether you need to get more meetings or you get plenty of meetings, but you need to get more deals closed, deals bigger, deals faster, better understanding of where you are within the deal and how do you control it and move it faster. I've got courses for both of those things, and you can go to b2brevenue.com under the training tab. There's a calendar link right there. Just click it, pick a 15-minute slot. I have it out, I think, 12 weeks, so you can pick a time. I just asked that you show up, so a couple people didn't show up, so it's kind of annoying. And also that you listen to at least 5 episodes of the podcast, so you kind of self-qualify that what I'm talking about fits what you're selling. It doesn't fit everybody. It doesn't fit B2C that well at all. It's much more business-to-business sales. And typically, the larger the deals, the more applicable it is to you. But before we get into the interview with Mark Smith, I don't know if you know Mark. He's quite active on LinkedIn. He's got a huge following there. And he came highly recommended when I put out a feeler for people to share, great sales leaders. Because I wanted to add that perspective. And I was thinking of using Mark for the B2B Revenue Leadership podcast. But his story, I think, is so applicable to all of us. And his approach is very sincere and honest and transparent that I really think you'll enjoy this. He's kind of getting over a cold, so I ask you to be patient with his voice. It's been a while trying to get him on because he's super busy and it's near the end of the year. But his story and his journey is really interesting. He grew up in an upper middle class family. His dad was an attorney. He was thinking about going to law school. He'll share that story. But before we get into it, I want to make sure you're checking out Co-Video. And earlier this week, I had Dustin on, and he shared his 3 top lessons that he has learned that's really enabled him to crush it now. Now this is a guy, he was a blue collar roofer, basically, in Indianapolis. Now, maybe during the summer that might be tolerable. And he's scared of heights. So he had a bad career choice. And now he's selling Co-Video. And he loves it. They're crushing it. So check out that episode. I think you'll like it. Also with Nudge, they've got a great new capability. Their Chrome plugin now allows you to, on LinkedIn, to be able to highlight somebody's name and find out how you're connected. You get the coupon code is Brutal Truth. You can use that for both Pipedrive and Nudge. And I've got a free course on how to use Nudge on the training site. We go to b2brevenue.com, then the training tab, hit the courses. You'll see it there, how to use AI to fill up your pipeline. The coupon code is NUDGE, the word nudge. Make sure you put that in and it totals out to 0 before you hit submit. No customer support with that class since it's no cost. Let's get into the interview with Mark. I'll sum it up, the three things that I learned from him at the very end. And I really appreciate you listening. Everybody, connecting up with me is nice, but the thing that I really appreciate is when you tell somebody about the podcast, where you like, share, and comment on the content that you see with my pretty face. And follow the company page, the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling company page on LinkedIn. Just search for it in LinkedIn, Brian G. Burns and Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling. It's all right there. Let's get Mark on the phone. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm the Vice President of Sales for Womply, which is a small business-focused software company here in Lehi, Utah, also with offices in San Francisco and a few other countries. Originally from California, educated at BYU, and I've lived all over the place, but I keep coming back to Utah. I think there's something about the sales and business environment here that keeps me coming back. So I think we're going to be a long-term Utah family at this point.
Yeah. Well, what is that? Because there seems to be a lot of very successful companies there.
I think everybody focuses a lot on the fact that you have the LDS missionaries that are taught at a young age to, go out in the world and knock door to door and communicate with people. But, I haven't seen that that's actually the really big driving force. If you actually go and look at the way that kids in Utah are educated, both in the home and in the public schools, Utah has a very entrepreneurial type of mindset. Partly because the business community here has, I think, just the right amount of regulation, but not too much. So you really can start a business pretty easily here. And so many people's parents have started their own businesses, but it's just an achievement mindset sort of state. And, with a heavy reliance on your own self-reliance. And so I think what you find is you have a lot of young people that come up through the public school system and through their home education, where they are taught that, achievement does matter and being good at something does matter. Doesn't matter necessarily what it is, but, you should take your talents and make a good use of them. I think that ends up with us having a really good pool of talent. And plus Utah is such a great place to live that we're attracting talent from all over the world. And so we have this pretty amazing little melting pot here of not only homegrown talent, but external talent that we've been able to utilize at, a number of companies that I've worked at.
And what was your motivation to get into sales? I mean, I'm looking at your resume. It was poli-sci major.
Yeah.
you didn't find any lobbyist roles in Utah? Or?
So everyone hates this answer, but I am the poster child of didn't know what else I was going to do, so I got into sales. My father was a trial attorney, and I thought, well, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, he came and visited one time and said, is your plan still to be an attorney? And I said, oh yeah, just like you want to take over the firm. He said, great. How do you like doing term papers? I said, oh, it's the worst part of college. Yeah. And he goes, hey, kiddo, hate to break it to you, but yeah, I'm in trial. And it's really fun when you're in trial, but it's about 5% of the time. The rest of it is basically, 18 hours a day of writing term papers. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. And so he said, listen, I'll support you, but it's not what you think it is. It's a different type of profession. And I think I knew at that point that definitely wasn't for me. So I got into sales and really hated the first job that I had, which was a great job. It was a pharmaceutical rep job, but outside sales just isn't for me. And so at that point, I'm thinking I'm in a real pickle here. I'm not going to be an attorney. I hate sales, but luckily my brothers were in sales and they encouraged me to start doing sales over the phone, and it clicked. And I thought, oh, thank goodness. And I've been able to have a pretty good career with phone-based sales. And of course that it's expanded to other types of sales roles, whether it's running retail or outside sales or even, customer care and operations. But I was really fortunate that by about age 25, 26, I had found something that I was good at and that I really enjoyed doing. And that led me into sales.
And what didn't you like about outside sales? I mean, I can imagine pharmaceutical. That's pretty brutal, because nobody wants to see you, right?
Yeah, so I don't regret that job. I do regret that I stayed as long as I did because it was out of cowardice. I was afraid to leave, but it did teach me a lot of resilience. But that just was a bad fit. Number one, people may think that I'm a really outgoing, extroverted guy, but I'm very introverted. I really do like being by myself and maybe reading a book or listening to some podcasts. So the face-to-face I struggle with a little bit because it was out of my comfort zone. I think the thing that I struggled with in that environment was that you don't do a lot of sales that you determine whether or not you've won. You walk in, you meet with a doctor, you try to convince them to write prescriptions for their patients for your drugs. You find out about 2 months later whether they did. Yeah. And so it was just really difficult mentally to think that I had just had an amazing conversation to find out 2 months later that I didn't. Or, but in other cases that taught me. I mean, one time I took my manager and we visited Dr. Maywood. And we visited Dr. Maywood because I knew Dr. Maywood would take my call. And I thought, well, this is a way I can show my manager that, these clients love me. So we went to his office and sure enough, he invited us back and he gave us about a half an hour of his time. And I was so proud about this quote unquote relationship that I had built. And when we left, my manager said, hey, you have to take him off your route. I said, why would I take him off my route? He said, Mark, we were there for a half an hour. He wanted to talk to a pharmaceutical rep. Did you see a single patient walk through? And I thought, oh my gosh. Sure enough, Dr. Maywood, who was an amazing guy, struggled to get patients and just liked to talk to people.
He was lonely. Yeah.
He was lonely. And so that, that's one of those lessons that even when you're in a sales job that you don't love, you think, okay, if you've been meeting with a prospect who doesn't have clients, well, it's not going to do much for you. If you've been dating a girl for 6 months and haven't met her friends, she's not your girlfriend. You have to learn whether or not you're actually making an impact and whether the people that you're making an impact with can actually purchase. So I don't regret my time as a pharmaceutical rep, but definitely it wasn't for me.
Yeah. And what did you like about phone sales? You got more traction or more activity and more directness?
Yeah, partly was because all of us, we don't love rejection, but getting rejected by a faceless entity isn't all that difficult. Also, when you get rejected within 20 or 30 seconds. Whereas as a pharmaceutical rep, if you leave that office without success, it may take you 15 to 20 minutes to go to the next office. And so the repetition of inside sales I thought was fantastic. I also liked that there's so much data in inside sales. I didn't know that I was a data geek at the time. I just learned it because I was able to see, okay, my first day I made 601 phone calls. I got one person to talk to me. It was one of the most miserable days of my life. Okay, so I have a 600 to 1. I can't do that forever.
That doesn't scale, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't scale. And people say, how'd you do that? Like that's a fabricated number. Oh no. When you work from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and you're so bad that nobody will talk to you, you can make 600 phone calls.
It's a lot of dials, yeah.
Oh, it was miserable. I honestly thought, what am I going to do? Because I'm willing to work hard, but this doesn't work. So I knew that I had to get better. And so I tracked my numbers, and with the help of some great mentors, I was at the point where I was in the mortgage industry at the time. I went from 601 phone calls to a loan application to 37 phone calls for a loan application. And those were pure cold calls. I could call 37 people out of a phone book, and one of them would apply for a loan with me. That scales. And so being able to track your metrics was really appealing to me. And then when I got into sales leadership, having those metrics, and then with, great mentors, learning about others, inside sales is still one of the premier jobs where if you take satisfaction off of having quick impact, both as a rep and as a leader, you have a really tough time finding a better role than inside sales. Because I know that if I sit in my office and for 3 hours, I crunch some really intricate data, and I find a piece of data that says that if I manipulate this, I get this in return. It's really gratifying to know that you can have a positive impact on people within minutes. Whereas with outside sales, which I've enjoyed managing that as well, there does seem to be more of a qualitative approach where it takes a little bit longer to know whether you have impacted somebody. And the thing I enjoy the most about leadership and actually life in general is impacting people. I want to have use. And so that's why inside sales is great. Tons of repetition, tons of metrics, and the ability to have a really quick impact is really great.
And that was your motivation to go from being a rep to a manager and a leader? Was to help people?
Yes, I won't say that part of it wasn't just to get off the phones. Everybody has to admit that. There are people that they actually don't want to be in leadership. Those of us that do, yes, of course, we want to help others and we want to grow our careers. But partly it is that we do believe that we can have a greater impact helping others than we can on the phones ourselves. And as much as I love being on the phones, and I'm still happy to do it today, on the phones, I can impact a customer. And as a leader, I can impact 100 employees and 1,000 customers. And so it's more yield for my time.
Yeah.
Having said that, I don't believe that it's for everybody. I don't think that sales leadership is the natural progression for every salesperson. In fact, it can't be. And that's actually one of the hard things about sales leadership is, everybody wants you to provide a viable career path, and you want to provide that. But you might have ratios that say that, at most 1 out of 12 or 1 out of 20 people will get a chance to be promoted. And, that can be difficult because you want to keep your promise to them. But if you have an organization of 100 people and you want to, staff management, maybe 6 or 8 people out of that 100 will get a promotion and 90 or more will not. So as a sales rep, even if you want to be in leadership, you do have to hone your skills so that if that path is not for you or isn't provided to you, you have upward progression in your on the phone career, your customer facing career, whether it's to go from, some organizations, it's a promotion to go from inside to outside. Sometimes it's the other way around, or to go from small business to enterprise, or to have a bigger territory. But there's a number of ways to get promoted in sales that don't necessarily mean that you're gonna oversee people.
And what was it like that first time you became a leader? How was that transition for you?
Oh, it was pure luck. That's the other thing. People are like, geez, Mark, you have all these answers that say that it's luck. Well, but it is. Yes, I worked very hard. Yes, I developed my skills. Yes, I have some natural leadership ability. But really what happened was I got a chance. And I was given my first leadership role. And I was very bad at it. But the person who employed me was also not that good at it.
So he didn't look that bad.
He didn't know how bad I was. And I was all about, Mickey Mantle quotes when things were good and Winston Churchill when things were bad, and, over disciplining and over praise, like all the things that you do wrong. But luckily, no one knew how bad I was. And so it bought me time. It bought me time to have some failure and to learn. And so I started to have these amazing mentors like Oren Daly or John Haniel, any one of these guys that they saw, okay, this guy can do it. He just needs to be taught a few things. And then I became good. I started to actually be able to impact people and strategize, and everything sort of worked out from there. But really, really fortunate that I was given some runway in my first position, or else it would have been a pretty short leadership career.
And how about you personally? How did you feel that first year? Did you feel like a fish out of water? Did you feel like you didn't know what you were doing?
So that's actually a really good question. I don't think I've actually thought about that before, but I know my answer. My answer is I felt invincible. You got to keep in mind that I had a good childhood. I was raised by a successful attorney and stay-at-home mom. I've got a decent looking face. I can play sports, and I've got a good mind. And I grew up upper middle class, and I grew up in Southern California.
Nice, yeah.
Not a lot was in my way.
Yeah.
And so I went through life, everything comes relatively easy to me. And so when I became a manager, I felt very entitled. Well, of course I was given a management job. I'm born to lead. I'm exactly who should be the leader. So what happened was I started out with tremendous confidence and then just got kicked right in the teeth. And I knew, oh my gosh, all of the things that prepared me for the trivial parts of my young life have done almost nothing to prepare me for this role. And I was very fortunate to have some mentors who would give it to me straight and really bring me down to size. And go ahead.
And what were the distinctions between that first year and kind of you now?
Sure. So, a couple of things really just in my life in general was in my early career and in my early life, it wasn't enough for me to win. I needed others to lose. I was really happy when, when their light dimmed. It just made mine look brighter, whether or not I'd actually accomplished anything. I thought I knew everything and didn't feel like I had to constantly learn, certainly not from people that I thought were beneath me. And again, everything had come easy to me. So I just thought, well, I'll just make this work. And really in my life and in my career, right around 2006, 2007, I decided I had to change. I decided I was miserable. I wasn't terribly successful in my career, even though I had a good title. And I decided the first thing that I was going to do was take control of my own emotions. I was going to assume the best in others. I was going to, even though I still would love to be number one, I was going to make room at the top for others. And that cascaded into my leadership style, which was before it was, listen, guys, it's the silly Glengarry Glen Ross nonsense of, number one gets a Cadillac and number two gets a set of steak knives. Yeah. Well, when you grow up and you get some wisdom, you realize that, a rep that brings in $1 million of revenue, they're no better than a rep that brings in $950,000 of revenue. It's ridiculous. There's room for a lot of winners. It's not the Kentucky Derby, where the horse that wins by a nose gets 100 times the prize money. I started to build, friendships and personal associations that focused on everybody's talents and what we could all bring to each other. And I did that in my leadership, career, which was, if I've got 100 reps, there's no such thing as a number one. Let me see if I can get 30 or 40 to be in what I would consider to be the top tier. And there's going to be some disparity in that top tier. And there's certainly going to be some contests and incentives where some win and some don't. But I'm not going to make, a rep in the top 25% feel bad because they're not number one. That's ridiculous. And so I think I just started to get better at leading people. They started to see that I valued a much broader base of people, a much broader base of human experience. I stopped recruiting people who looked like me, and I started recruiting people who were better than me, who were better communicators, who were more even keel. I started to truly want to learn from my people rather than thinking that I needed to pontificate all the time. And so it all kind of coalesced where my life and my career started to get better. And over about a 2 to 3 year period, I became a different person and I think a better leader.
And was this an epiphany? Was it feedback from other people? Was it just looking at yourself in the mirror and your results that you were getting, or just an inner drive?
It was an epiphany, but it was also driven by a speech that I saw that talked about the misery of those who both feel offense and take offense. And what I learned when I listened to that speech was, there are a lot of things in my life that legitimately cause me to feel offended. But I'm kind of a loser if I allow those things to dictate my life. And I genuinely take offense and I allow myself to accumulate enemies or resentments. And I saw that in my marriage where, I needed to be my wife's number one, and that needed to be at the expense of her family. Well, that wasn't getting me anywhere. It was getting me a miserable home life. And I saw that in my career where, if I thought that you were offending me, I had to try to burn you down. Then I decided that day, you know what, if I total up all the people who have offended me, I can't think of a single one who did it on purpose. I can't think of a single one that actually intended for me to be hurt. So I decided there that I would, anytime I felt offended or felt uncomfortable by the actions of others, I would quickly decide, are they intending to hurt me? If the answer was no, which it was 99% of the time, I would do what it took to distance myself from that hurt. And I would assume positive intent, and I would pre-forgive them, and then I would work out with them whatever concerns they had. And if I did believe that you were trying to harm me or harm my family, which was, 1 out of 1,000 times, I would feel justified to fight you to the death. In the last 20 years, I can think of 1 or 2 times that I've legitimately felt like I needed to be someone's enemy. Everyone else, you just start to realize they're just like you. They're just as afraid of you as you. They're just as self-conscious. They're not trying to hurt you, just like you don't try to hurt others. Now, I'm not saying I'm some sort of Gandhi that, I was able to flip overnight. But I did decide that way of life was a skill I could develop. And if I just practiced it over and over again, it would get easier. So I took a leap of faith, and that leap of faith worked. And I'm here to tell anyone, you can develop a skill to be happy. You can develop a skill to love others and to forgive others. It isn't transcendental. It isn't religious, although those things I believe can help. I am a faithful religious person, but you can absolutely develop a skill to be a better human. It takes a long time, it takes patience, it takes courage, but when you do, man, life gets really easy when you remove hate and resentment from your heart.
And what speech was that? Do you remember?
I believe it was called And None Shall Be Offended by David Bednar. If I got the title wrong, I it's close enough. But I believe it was 2006, and it was in a general conference of my church. If you remove from it anything in it which has religious overtones, which is, I would say, about 20% of the speech, what you're left with is a masterclass on self-awareness and life. And it is direct. It really does say, it certainly doesn't call anyone a loser, but it is your problem if you take the feeling of offense and turn that into sort of a possession of yours, something that you hold. It is up to you as an adult, as a human being, to decide for yourself what your emotions will be. If you can control those emotions, you don't become a weaker person. No one takes advantage of me. But what I do is I forgive. And it puts me into a mindset where if I do need to watch over, my own well-being, I do it with a very clear head, without the emotion of, I need to hurt this person or this person's trying to hurt me. This is the situation. They feel one way, I feel another, and let's work through this together. And almost all of the time, everybody ends up getting along. And you certainly in personal life, but same thing. It's a tough month. You're not hitting your goals. You bring everyone in a room and you say, guys, we will assume positive intent in this room. We will assume that everybody here is on the same page. We will assume that we are all intelligent. And we will have an open dialogue. We will create conflict, but it will be with a positive mindset. And we will rely on wisdom and negotiation to get to the best answer, not on emotion or personal grievance or protectionism. And you know what, Brian? Sometimes you do have someone in the room who is an adversary. We've all had that. The person who just can't get past blame or can't get past the fact that they believe that they're the only one who cares. And sometimes you do have to eliminate those people from the room or from your company. But if you start with an assumption of intelligence, an assumption of trust and positive intent, not only do you get to the best answers, but those who don't have positive intent, man, they self-select really quick.
Yeah.
They stick out like the biggest sore thumb in the room. Everyone knows it, and they have a way of not coming back the next week.
And they're looking out for themselves, and everything else is all about them and how it serves them.
Yeah. But the thing is, when that does happen, everybody else feels justified. They don't feel like people were, pushed out of an organization. They don't feel like, the leader or has ganged up on somebody. They say, you know what? We're all part of the same environment. We're all provided the same consistent sort of style. And if this person really has exposed themselves as not being on the same team or, maybe not being as competent as we thought they were, everybody feels a little bit more justified when those changes get made.
And when you're looking to develop a rep into a leader, what do you look for?
Gosh, I wish I was better at this. I think I still make as many bad hiring decisions and promotion decisions as others, but what I look for is at least above average skill. I definitely don't think it has to be your top person, but they have to have credibility. They have to have consistently met quota. But after that, I'm really looking for people who are great communicators, because they're going to have to resolve conflict and they're going to have to lead change. I'm looking for people who ask great questions, because you don't really get good answers unless you're asking the great questions. I'm looking for people who seem to have an understanding of how others learn, and that they understand that, if they have a team of 12, they're going to have to teach and communicate in probably 2 or 3 different ways, and that they have the ability to adapt to those. I certainly have had managers that have one style, and if they have the ability to recruit and develop that style of person, that can be successful. If you're in a high growth mode, you don't get the luxury of handpicking everybody to be, the same cookie cutter. You're going to have a number of different types of people. And I think a good leader is able to communicate and teach at least two or three different type of people. And also just have an even keel where, you can get really high when you're trying to set a record or the end of the month. But I would prefer leaders that have a blood pressure that stays the same, 95% of the time, because I think that communicates a consistency and a trust that is especially important in a startup. It's been a long time since I've worked at a huge corporation where maybe a leader could hide a little bit more, and maybe the organization is not going to have any substantive changes for a long period of time. But when you work with startups, the only constant is change. It does happen to be true. So if you can maintain some sort of consistency in your communication, your teaching, and the way that you interact with people, even when you go through substantive change, I think people can still feel like there's the proper captain of the ship, and the boat is still moving in the right direction.
Hey, this has been a great conversation, Mark. Where do people go to connect with you, follow you, and learn more about your company?
Well, me personally, I think the best way is on LinkedIn. I think I've tapped out connections. I think you just have to follow at this point. But otherwise, Womply.com. Every day we wake up and we make American small businesses stronger. We build software that is valuable, that's easy to use, and really does provide benefit to every small business in the country. And that's a really exciting thing for us to do. So whether you are a small business owner or you just want to learn about the businesses that push about 51% of the U.S. economy, visit Womply.com, check out our products, but also check out the different communication that we have on there about small business. And I think that it'll add to your career and to your general knowledge base of the people around you.
Hey, Mark's a great guy. So here's the three things I got out of Mark. And I didn't know him before this interview. I heard his reputation was super good. I seen his posts on LinkedIn, and I liked them. And I think they were very well thought out. But the number one thing was just that honesty. I think you really felt that, where he was honest about, how lucky he was to grow up in Southern California, with parents that, mom didn't have to work. Dad was an attorney, got to go to a great college, was honest with himself about going to law school. Too many people, I think, go to law school and then figure out that it's not for them. Totally get it. I couldn't possibly do it, both intellectually and from an interest standpoint. But being honest about yourself, about the situation you're in, the realities of it. Too many sales managers, sales leaders get delusional. They get their process and their numbers and their spreadsheets in the way of what really matters, and that's the quality. And I've talked about this a lot. It's like focus on the quality of your day, the quality of your calls, the quality of your actions versus the volume of them. And because volume can be faked. You can rationalize volume. You can rationalize quality a little bit, but you're the one that pays for it. Too many of us are focused on just the number of activities versus the results. And the results is a lagging indicator. So how do we build off of that quality? What kind of calls did I have today? Were they qualified? Did I qualify them properly? Did I do enough research? Did I really talk to them about what they cared about? How could I do better? That is what's going to get you further. Number two is be humble. Especially as a leader, meaning that you've got to assume that you're not perfect. I think we got that from Dustin earlier this week. And look for better ways. Listen to other people. The people who are doing the job, probably have a better handle on it than the people managing the people doing the job. And I think that kind of came out through Mark's talk. And that's what I got out of it. And it's very unusual to hear that from a sales leader. Too many people, what I hear from a lot of leaders is, oh, sales is sales or marketing is marketing, no matter where you are. And I couldn't disagree more. I've gone from, one company that sold the same type of product into the same market to another company, almost identical. And it was so different. And I see this all the time, territory to territory, year to year, quarter to quarter. It's so contextual. We're playing a game every day. We're performers. And the rules of the game are slightly different every day. The summer is very different than the winter, not from just a weather standpoint, but from people's temperament. Are they available, what they're thinking about, what their priorities are? And we have to be open to that. And that goes into number 3, which is flexible. Instead of finding something that worked at one time in one situation and assuming that that's going to transcend your whole career, you have to be flexible and adapt. Stick to some core principles, but also understand that things have changed and things are going to continue to change. And we got to adapt, but not also just follow the shiny object. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I really did enjoy it. I wasn't going to put it out for a while, and I was going to put it out on the kind of the leadership podcast, the B2B revenue leadership show. But I think reps will get a lot out of it because they'll understand what it takes to become a leader, move up into management, and make it about the reps and getting success and helping other people. And that is what really works. So I hope you enjoyed that. I've got Discover.org coming up next. We're going to be talking about selling to leaders, selling to people in different situations, and their company's just on fire. We had the guy from G2 Crowd on last week. Discover.org is just crushing it on G2 Crowd, as is Gong. Gong's killing it. Chris Orlob, I can't wait to have him back on the show. He's going to give us an update on their product that's really evolving fast. So make sure you're checking that out at discoverorg.com. And come on by my site, b2brevenue.com. Look in the show notes. If you don't know how to get them, go to YouTube and just get a quick video on it. Super simple. On the iPhone, you just swipe up. And I'm not sure how you do it on the other players. I've started using Castbox as well. I find that's really good. And Anchor FM, I think, is coming out with an app. So I'm glad that Apple's going to get some competition. That their app is it's catching up, but it's still. They just changed it again, so it makes it harder to find the shows. So make sure you keep mine up there at the very top, and we'll see you next time. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode. And I really would appreciate everybody who goes onto LinkedIn, connects up with me, or follows me there. If you happen to see some of my content flying by, if you could throw a little thumbs up or a comment or a share, I definitely appreciate it. It helps spread the word about the podcast. And make sure you're checking out my website, b2brevenue.com. You can get my free book on how companies make product selections. It's a real book. It is on Amazon, but I give it away for free. Just register there. It'll email you a link to it, and you can just download the PDF from there. Also, if you want to check out the courses, start the conversation, get the meeting, or closing the complex sale, and you have more questions about it, the short answer is there are video courses. You get access for a year, but it's also a community. What does that mean? You can ask questions anytime via voicemail or email. I answer them within a week, put them into the course. We have office hours every other week. It's an hour long course where you can I pick a topic, answer questions, you can ask questions. Also, you can schedule one-on-ones for free, and we just talk through your particular use case, and that gets shared with the course. So if you don't have time for office hours or the timing doesn't work, or you just want some more one-on-one help, that's all included for a whole year. So it's really a year to go from where you are to where you want to be. And so it's not just videos, it's not just knowledge, it's practice, it's getting feedback. You can send me emails, you can send me your presentation. I'll help you with anything that you need to close the complex sale or get the meeting. And you can check out them at b2brevenue.com. So that's it. I really appreciate it. And please tell somebody about the podcast and let me know if I can help you in any way. Oh, and you want to hear some results from the course? Well, here you go.
You know, I love the approach. It's working for me just fantastic. If I sent you some of the emails, which I should, the conversations that I'm having with people, I think you'd be blown away because they're not really about work. Yeah. I've figured out if you can kind of get personal with them, like one lady, it's all about her family, kids. And then I sprinkled in a little bit around work, and she's LinkedIn, sending me messages on LinkedIn, photos of her family. No, I'm not even kidding. I should show this to you. You'd be stunned. I was shocked. And we're going to lunch on September 6th. And yesterday she shot me a LinkedIn message and said, "Hey, Ron, why don't we get on the phone and do a video call beforehand so our lunch isn't so awkward? We're like barely not meeting each other for the first time." Oh, holy cow, right? Like, this is unbelievable. So this is not the first time that this has happened. She's kind of an extreme, but I'm starting to figure out a pattern where I can actually make this a process, you know? So
good. Yeah.
I'll show you that. So it's getting to that point. And every time I do this, I'm like, God, this is unbelievable, you know? So.
And it feels better too, doesn't it?
Oh, Brian, let me tell you something. To be able to go to lunch with her, I'll even talk to her on the phone, right? We're going to talk about family, kids, work-life harmony, because I shared a thing with her from Bezos about work-life harmony. This is where the conversation will start. Now, at some point, we're both not stupid, right? We know we're going to talk about work. We know why we're both there. Right. But to kick it off this way is so much better. And to end that lunch with the last 5 to 8 minutes of telling, well, what are you guys doing with digital